So, known you since, what is it, 2015?
I don't know, it's timeless.
It feels that way some days. Jim is out of Wabash, Indiana. He does a lot of business up and down the Midwest, and a brilliant. He's a soil scientist in his own right, from just a lifetime of experience, and on top of that, he's got an amazing tillage device, and that's all I'm going to say. So let me get your presentation up here, and you can get started. And probably after we break to lunch, I'll actually pull up a video of your tiller working. And I say tiller, but it's not a little tiller. It's a great big.
Can be.
Yeah.
It can be. Yeah, this is.
Your down button. So.
Okay. It's a bit of a challenge to try to profile for you what is involved in my lifetime of experience of 40 years with this form of tillage. But I'm going to try to just fly through this really fast because there's just so many areas that tillage affects. Most of us recognize the fact that tillage in general today has a black eye. Yes? You've all heard that. You've all probably experienced the, the psychological pressure. And so, right? It's called propaganda, right? Anyways, so I'm going to just fly through a bunch of things that we've observed, and it's really ramped up since becoming associated with John and the product mix, including Tidal Grow, Old Pacific Grow. Now, all of this comes together in a system which I'm going to try to get my arms around and hopefully help you get your arms around. I'll be here all afternoon as well, or until somebody boots me out of here. People want to stop talking. This is what we don't want to see. And we see way too much of it, and that corn will still get harvested, and it'll still get blended with other corn, and it'll pass muster to market. And you and I and our cattle and animals will be eating diseased organisms like this, simply because the numbers allowed it to be blended and used. I reject that scenario. I think most everybody seated in this room rejects this methodology in the food system. But that's what we have today. And the only way we overcome this problem is by producing disease-free products. And so everything about the system is all aimed toward this, health. And so soil health is a very popular term. Everybody's, blabbing about it all the time. The government's really big into it. That's how NRCS defines it. Have fun with that. But indeed, the reason I like this is because it is about restoring the ecosystem of our real estate. Everything, from the soil to the forests to all the vegetation. Our entire ecosystem is in chaos. And for me, in order to address chaos, I try to go to the authority. And the authority on tillage is actually in the scriptures. You can go there and you can find the command to till. So no-till is strictly in opposition to God's command. You can go to numerous places in Scripture, and you can find out all kinds of things about tillage and ecosystem decline. And this one I really was amazed at. They actually identified the fact that important soil organic matter formation is organic formation is more important than the soil type. How's that cool? I don't care if you've got the nicest sandy loam soil on planet Earth. What you're doing organically in that soil will trump your soil type. Okay? I work with some really nasty soil, by the way. I'll just tell you one of them. I've worked with them for over 50 years. And they have less than 5% sand in their soil. You cannot internally drain this soil. It is 45% clay and 45% silt. And today it produces totally disease-free corn and alfalfa to feed 120 dairy cows, just like it has for 4 generations. And they use virtually no fertilizer. The corn is ready to combine at 20 points of moisture, and the plant is green all the way to the ground, all the way to the top. I heard about it. You know, it was a dream. I saw it. I have a farm that's been experiencing it now for over 30 years. And if you'd like to know where to go, I'll be glad to tell you. I love this man. I'm talking about James White at Rutgers, and for what he's brought to the table concerning rhizophagy. You can read all about it. You can watch a 7-hour-long presentation of that John came and helped us with in Wabash, and Dr. White speaks for 2 hours beginning at 10 o'clock. And if you're not up to speed on rhizophagy, please go take that video in. It's on our website, and it's prominently there. It's a 7-hour video. You can scroll through to 10 o'clock to catch Dr. White. What really took me here by surprise after the whole symposium was over last December in Wabash was this particular slide. And it's because I've struggled with agricultural chemicals for a long, long time, trying to create a healthy soil when we keep undermining our best efforts, putting on some pretty toxic chemistries. And now, of course, with the work that's been done, we've realized that glyphosate is probably the most persistent agricultural chemical that's ever been introduced into our soil ecosystem, with records as long as 22 years in apple orchards in the state of Ohio. A reasonably good climate for chemical degradation, and it's 22 years old. And so, because glyphosate is a strong chelator, and primarily iron, number 2 is copper, number 3 is manganese and zinc. Most everybody thinks that it's manganese. That's only because the plant exhibits it first. But in fact, it's actually iron that's the problem. And the whole essence of creating rhizophagy, or microbial digestion, is the creation of superoxide, which requires the metal catalyst, iron. Hello? Here is a farm that's used glyphosate for 35 years. On the average, at least a liter a year. Some years, 2. Here's a farm that's never seen the chemical. Exactly the same program went in with the seed, including Tidal Grow's product, including microbiology. No supplemental phosphorus and no supplemental nitrogen. And you can see the difference in the formation of these roots. And as you study Dr. White's presentation, you'll understand why you see this difference. Basically, to swing a little bit toward tillage, I just want to say very briefly that unless we manage water and air properly and efficiently in the soil profile, we will either be excessively aerobic or we will be excessively anaerobic. We need both in order for the redox reaction to take place, which I won't go into at all. You have to have alternating conditions in soil. Prolonged conditions of either one or exaggerated elements of either one produces an aberration or chaos. Keep going, Jim. This study was done in 1977, or published in 1977, in Plant Root Systems. It's a work that was done in England. And this gives you a graphic understanding of what can happen in an aggravated anaerobic soil situation. And it directly relates to what we're talking about with mycorrhizae, or any other of the organisms that are trying desperately to support your plant. You can see here that they added ethylene at 10 parts per million. Ethylene is a very popular biochemical created in an anaerobic soil. Standing water, you will get ethylene. And as a result, you can see the treated and the untreated. You notice how the growth habit was completely altered on this barley plant? You're starting with a stacked deck. I don't care how much good mycorrhizae you got out there. You don't have a very good architecture in which to use it. You get it? I mean, it's like the wrong house, okay? And when you build that house, there's all kinds of funny things that are going to happen. One of the things that I am really preoccupied with is soil nitrogen behavior. Number one reason is I don't like drinking nitrates in my water. Anybody else enjoy nitrate? You got it, right? So this is actually the summary of data over a 3-year experience using on a swine farm in Indiana, where we surface applied manure, and we did the form of tillage that you will learn about at the table out there. You can read all about it. And John, I guess, is going to demonstrate. But the interesting part was when we began with this field 3 years ago, equal parts of nitrate and nitrogen in each of these profiles. You understand that I'm taking nitrogen samples 21 inches deep, but I'm trying to find out what is the behavior, what's the motion, what's happening. It's kind of like still frames in a cartoon, okay? I'm picking up motion and change by going profiles in 7-inch profiles down that data sheet. And so you can see nitrate nitrogen, which should be moving with water down, is actually beginning to concentrate in just 3 years in the top 7 inches. Its behavior has been completely altered. It's because we've changed the ecosystem. And what really got me was that over here on the bottom under the ammonium nitrogen, we're actually increasing nitrogen at 21 inches in an unleachable ammonium form. It doesn't leach, so how'd it ever get there? Your mouth is open. Doesn't make any sense, except that you put root systems down there, and those root system exudates happen to contain nitrogen in an unleachable amine form. You getting the drift? Now, in a corn rotation, this is ideal because the young plant prefers nitrate nitrogen early, and where is it concentrating? Where that plant root system is. And it's all organic, right? And later, when the root systems are pulling water from deep resources and it's pulling amine nitrogens, it's going to be pulling it from deeper in the profile. We didn't engineer this. This is a sign that the ecosystem of the soil is actually being restored. We couldn't engineer it. In fact, I couldn't even anticipate it. But this is what's happening. Here's basically is an old slide I generated years ago that still really defines it. And I ask you to redefine tillage. Most of us think about tillage by what it looks like. I had my paradigm for tillage totally altered 40 years ago when I saw the effect that the technology that John asked me to come and talk about was put into motion. And it's essentially an exposition of Genesis 8:21. In that scripture, God says, I will never again curse the ground. I've had lots of people say, well, that must be the restatement of thorns and thistles. No, it's not. It's a new curse. And the signature of it was the rainbow, remember? Come on, you Bible scholars, start nodding your heads. Okay? And so those raindrops were in the air to create the prism, right, of sunlight. You couldn't do that without raindrops in the air. There was no rainbow prior to this period because there were never raindrops. For you readers who don't really pay attention, it never rained until the flood event. They didn't know what standing water was because it was all capillary water, 100%. And so this curse literally was actually first defined by a German scientist in 1938, and he coined the phrase microerosion. All we're doing is addressing the curse and leaving the system intact. You'll love this. That farm I referred to with all that clay and silt, Ward Lab said was 50% fungal. And we never applied any. It just automatically went there by itself. We're essentially taking silt, which has moved with water because their densities are very close, which accumulates in this particular soil. It accumulated in the 5th inch. You see the purple bar in the graph? That's the silt percentage. I did a mechanical assay separating sand, silt, and clay particles in every inch of a 7-inch profile and identified literally the anatomy, which this German scientist had done using a microscope. I did it using a mechanical assay and discovered what we have is a density layer which forms up of silt particles, and I got 2 minutes left.
That's about it.
So all we're doing is essentially breaking through that barrier and rendering it useless, ineffective. Getting the idea? For me, that's tillage. If I restore the ability of soil to breathe, to manage water, I have tilled. I have restored the natural functions of soil. Okay? That's just another graph of the same thing. So there are lots of elements of this. One of them, which I would love to go into, it's a neat story, is that we actually encourage beneficial insects to move back on our fields. And we encourage them to process that plant material. And this particular form of tillage not only leaves residue on the surface, if you've inadvertently buried it, it'll bring it back to the top and leave it on top of your field. We're using foliar applications to apply biology. That's a picture of what the tool looks like. As you can see, it doesn't look like you've done much. In fact, you've got to really look hard to find the evidence. That's most of the evidence right there, which actually just tills about 1 inch to 2 inches deep. And it basically doesn't invert, but merely pulls through like you would drag your finger through a sandbox. My point, I guess, to sum up is if you were adding on to your house, I doubt very much if you'd tear it down. But that's essentially, we have two choices, okay? I should get this done. We have two choices. We can change the filters on the water system. We can change the furnace filter and the air conditioners and all that stuff. We can maintain the structure. Or we can basically go in there and just terrorize everything and tear it down. But the effort was to add a room. Hello? Every one of you is trying to leave an inheritance, right? You're trying to leave your soil better than the day you started with it. But in effect, if you don't do tillage, you haven't maintained the system. It doesn't manage water and air. You with me? So you're always starting over. That gets old, doesn't it? Well, don't believe the lies that no-till is okay, because that's akin to not changing your water filters and the other elements that maintain the main structure. Hello? You can only live in defiance of that maintenance for so long. Okay, I think that's it, John. Man, I'm amazed.
I am too.